because it would protect access up to 15 weeks. The average abortion is performed in that window of time.
But recently, Donald Trump has just said, well, it's okay, just let the states figure it out.
Exactly, except for today, because he went into the ballot box and he cast a vote in Florida that said no to the ballot initiative, which means he voted for something that restricts abortion access after 6 weeks of time. Now, when he was asked by reporters, when he went to do that and they asked him to explain the vote, he said, stop asking me about that, which has basically been the approach for the past few weeks. Stop asking me about that, because there was concern that it could hurt Republicans. But for Democrats, they had really hoped it would help them. And we just didn't see that in the way perhaps that the vice president calculated. She put that right front and center in this campaign, talking about it so much. And now you could, I'm sure, John, you could argue it another way, which is when you look at some of the exit polls, Harris voters did say that was at times their second most important issue, the first being the state of democracy.
Right, but it didn't drive their vote.
It didn't.
I mean, it didn't, I'm still struck by her underperformance with women relative to events that you think under the traditional way of thinking about politics would help increase her vote with women, and given what Donald Trump has said and the way he has behaved, it's one of the stories. It's one of the stories of the evening.
Yeah, I'm also curious, Ed, about Arizona. Why is the Senate candidate in Arizona doing so well?
Ruben Gallego started his campaign by reminding voters in Arizona he's a Marine veteran.
Because he was running against Kari Lake.
And but first he was running against Kyrsten Sinema. And he was able to demonstrate pretty quickly as he launched his campaign that Sinema had no hope of running. So then Kari Lake jumped in. Big election denier, someone who had tried unsuccessfully to align herself with Trump. He kind of held distance because in the end was not a big fan. And Gallego is going to be a really good lesson to his party about how it is you can run a race in a battleground state, how you run a race that wins Latino male support. A lot of what he was doing in the last few weeks, the Harris campaign bandwagoned onto. And when they were trying to tell them, you should have been doing this from the beginning. Rodeos, soccer matches.
And, we should check in now with Chris Van Cleve, because he is in Phoenix, Arizona, with an update. Good evening, Chris.
Well, Nora, if I can build on something Margaret was saying, we were talking to the David Schweikert campaign. He is a conservative Republican. He is pro-life and was just hammered on the abortion issue for weeks on end in attack ads. I asked him about this issue. Were they worried about losing pro-choice Republicans? And his team said no. They felt like having abortion on the ballot allowed pro-choice Republicans to vote their conscience and then vote their party. And that may be playing out here as we get more of the votes. Now, so many people vote by mail in Arizona that while we will get the total number of people who voted at the polls today in Maricopa County, for example, we understand it's about 250,000. There are hundreds of thousands of uncounted mail-in ballots, many of which were dropped off today at the polls. That's going to take several days to go through the signature verification process, to check the ballots. It also taking a little bit longer than it has in years past, because in most counties, it's a 2-page ballot, not a 1-page ballot. So you multiply that times hundreds of thousands of ballots, it slows the process down a little bit. So any of these races that are particularly close here could take days, if not 10 to 13 days even, to know who won, to have all of those votes counted.
Chris Van Cleve, thank you. Let's check in with correspondent Lilia Luciano. She is in Las Vegas, Nevada. Good evening, Lilia.
Good evening, Nora. Here in Nevada, what just ended was a big celebration. We are at a viewing party for the Republican Party, for the Trump campaign. I've been hearing from voters for many days now that the issues that really affect them are all economic related. Although there is a ballot question on the ballot here that so far has more than 60% of the vote to enshrine the right to abortion. I've heard from women on both sides who are voting on those issues. One tonight told me that it's the conservative values, although she is a Latina, she is a woman, that is the conservative values of the Republican Party of former President Trump, what drove her to the polls. We've also heard from immigrants who became citizens and have told me they voted for Trump because they believe in his harsher policies at the border. But the things that we heard the most about are the price of groceries here. It's one of the places where the groceries are the most expensive, with the fastest rising rising rents and with the highest unemployment in the country. And what we're seeing right now, of course, this race hasn't been called. There's many more votes that will be counted over here until Saturday. Mail-in ballots that come in before Election Day, or rather that come in before Saturday, will still be counted as long as they're postmarked by today, by Election Day. There's also many votes that have to go through a curing process, and that could take all the way to November 12th. But from the numbers that we're seeing, a very surprising race is that of Sam Brown, who still has a chance to unseat Senator Jackie Rosen, the incumbent. What he told me, he's a Purple Heart recipient, is that he's an outsider, that he's an everyday man, that he and his wife are veterans, and that they don't always necessarily align with former President Trump. In fact, he got Trump's endorsement pretty late in the race, but that he hopes to represent, if he does win that Senate seat, the every person here in the state of Nevada. This party was very lively up until just a few minutes ago. The music came down, but I'll tell you that there's a great deal of enthusiasm from Republican voters here at this Trump campaign party.
Lilia Luciano in Las Vegas for us tonight. Thank you, Lilia. I also want to bring in David Becker, our CBS News election law contributor. And David, what do you expect in the days ahead?
Yeah, just to kind of follow up on that reporting from Lilia and Chris. In Arizona, we're hearing from Maricopa County that there's likely somewhere in the range of, say, 650,000 to 800,000 ballots that are still being processed and counted. That's going to take days to do. So there might be some margins there that can be made up. And then in Nevada, as Lilia reported, there's mail ballots that came in today. Those still need to be processed. There's these around 30,000, give or take, mail ballots that had a problem with them and still could be cured. They have up until November 12th. There's the mail ballots that could still come in up through and including Saturday. So depending on how narrow the margins are, we might be waiting for a few days in the state of Nevada and obviously in the state of Arizona as well.
All right, David Becker, thank you. All right, CBS News, America Decides Election 2024. We'll be right back.
Of our country.
It is time for a new generation of leadership in America.
I am tonight announcing my candidacy for President of the United States.
This is not a time to be complacent. That's why I'm running for re-election.
Both leading candidates right now will be in their 80s.
For months when you were asked about your age, you would respond with the words, watch me. Well, then
with the COVID, excuse me, with dealing with everything we have to do with if we finally beat Medicare.
There are at least some House Democrats who were gathered tonight watching this together, talking to the White House about having him step down.
Look what happened.
Shots have rung out at a rally where President Trump was addressing the crowd.
They have extended the security perimeter around the Republican National Convention, which is set to get underway tomorrow.
And that iconic photo of him coming up, all we have to do is show that.
President Joe Biden has decided to drop out of the 2024 race.
I decided the best way forward is to pass the torch to a new generation.
Them are all economic related, although there is a ballot question on the ballot here that so far has more than 60% of the vote to enshrine the right to abortion. I've heard from women on both sides who are voting on those issues. One tonight told me that it's the conservative values, although she is a Latina, she is a woman, that is the conservative values of the Republican Party of former President Trump what drove her to the polls. We've also heard from immigrants who became citizens and have told me they voted for Trump because they believe in his harsher policies at the border. But the things that we heard the most about are the price of groceries. Here, it's one of the places where the groceries are the most expensive, with the fastest rising rents and with the highest unemployment in the country. And what we're seeing right now, of course, this race hasn't been called. There's many more votes that will be counted over here until Saturday. Mail-in ballots that come in before Election Day, or rather that come in before Saturday, will still be counted as long as they're postmarked by today, by Election Day. There's also many votes that have to go through a curing process, and that could take all the way to November 12th. But from the numbers that we're seeing, a very surprising race is that of Sam Brown, who still has a chance to unseat Senator Jackie Rosen, the incumbent. What he told me, he's a Purple Heart recipient, is that he's an outsider, that he's an everyday man, that he and his wife are veterans, and that they don't always necessarily align with former President Trump. In fact, he got Trump's endorsement pretty late in the race, but that he hopes to represent, if he does win that Senate seat, the every person here in the state of Nevada. This party was very lively up until just a few minutes ago. The music came down, but I'll tell you that there's a great deal of enthusiasm from Republican voters here at this Trump campaign party.
Lilia Luciano in Las Vegas for us tonight. Thank you, Lilia. I also want to bring in David Becker, our CBS News election law contributor. And David, what do you expect in the days ahead?
Yeah, just to kind of follow up on that reporting from Lilia and Chris. In Arizona, we're hearing from Maricopa County that there's likely somewhere in the range of, say, 650,000, 800,000 ballots that are still being processed and counted. That's going to take days to do. So there might be some margins there that can be made up. And then in Nevada, as Lilia reported, there's mail ballots that came in today. Those still need to be processed. There's these around 30,000, give or take, mail ballots that had a problem with them and still could be cured. They have up until November 12th. There's the mail ballots that could still come in up through and including Saturday. So depending on how narrow the margins are, we might be waiting for a few days in the state of Nevada and obviously in the state of Arizona as well.
All right, David Becker, thank you. All right, CBS News, America Decides Election 2024. We'll be right back.
Trump's someone who wants to focus on the border, and that could use the military. We could see military force now being used, as Cecilia and her colleagues and others have reported at CBS News. Most importantly, what we see from a Trump presidency is an executive branch that will be used by Trump to imprint policy that's in his image and likeness. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., someone who has been a progressive figure in this country for decades, now will have a real hand on the steering wheel when it comes to health policy in this country.
Donald Trump says he'll let RFK Jr. do what he wants with women's health care.
And this is someone who has opposed vaccine mandates. We don't have time to get into every single position of Mr. Kennedy, but you have a coalition that's not a traditional conservative coalition. And when it comes to abortion rights and other issues, conservatives might be frustrated by how Trump took this position on abortion, how he responded to reporters earlier today. But talking to my sources in the evangelical community, the Catholic community, the Jewish community, I will tell you this. Tonight, they all say to CBS News they believe they will have a seat at the table with Trump. The 47th president, they believe, will give them a full hearing, regardless of what he said during the campaign, to hear how they want to overhaul social policy, economic policy, foreign policy.
Well, Bob, you heard him tonight.
Staff. Who will be Donald Trump's chief of staff?
The leading candidate, I'm told at this moment, is Susie Wiles, who you just saw on stage, someone who has become a confidant. Trump likes that she's low-key. As you saw tonight, she didn't want to speak. Chris LaCivita, who has been her partner, said a few words. I'm told LaCivita is not interested in necessarily being chief of staff. But you could also have someone from the business community. Now, you have a lot of business leaders who are angling for positions. But Trump, as he has told many people privately, essentially wants to be his own chief of staff. Kevin McCarthy, the former House Speaker, is someone whose name has been mentioned, but he is not, I'm told, interested in coming into that role.
We heard him tonight say promises
chief of staff
made.
is a real dangerous thing. Jimmy Carter tried that, and it's a disaster.
Don't they say a doctor who is his own patient or a lawyer who's his own client is a fool? But you heard him say in his speech, promises made, promises kept. And Maya Angelou used to say, when people show you who they are, believe them the first time. Do we have any reason to doubt that he won't do everything that he said he's going to do?
And more. What's so notable about this election is that former President Trump believes he has not just won an election, but he has affirmed a movement in this country that I think back, and the Democrats are going to have a moment for the next 4 years where they think about their future. I remember sitting over breakfast with Bernie Sanders, the Vermont senator, 10 years ago, and he told me that the future in this country would come down to the issue of class. Class more than anything, how people feel economic pain. And he said it's either going to be the Democrats or Republicans who speak to the economic pain people feel in this country. And he still believes, based on my reporting, that he would have won against Trump in 2016. President Biden believes he would have beat Trump in 2016 because they believe they speak to that economic pain. Biden wins in 2020 with a similar coalition trying to speak to working people. But the question now for Democrats is, can they win back some of these people? And it might not be appealing to the Liz Cheney Republicans, but appealing to those who like Senator Bernie Sanders, those who are searching. We encounter in our reporting all the time people in this country who are not seeing themselves as political, but feel pain about the future of their well-being, their families' opportunity.
But Kamala Harris always talked about the working class and the middle class and what she wanted to do.
But it was
for
a
them.
compressed campaign.
Okay.
Just a few weeks.
Did they not believe her?
It's not that they didn't believe her. So many voters I met feel like they didn't fully know her in terms of speaking to their grievances. They respected her as a vice president of the United States, but she was a relatively low vice president, low profile, with working with President Biden. And running from August to now is not easy, even if you're a perfect politician with a perfect campaign.
You know, one thing we haven't seen a delay in is the world leaders who are coming out and congratulating Donald Trump, even though he is still short of the 270 electoral votes at this hour. Two of the first conservative leaders, two of his biggest fans, Hungary's prime minister, Viktor Orban, one of the most problematic members of NATO, who has put his body oftentimes in between yes votes to approve more funding for Ukraine. Also, now the head of a very far right-wing government in Israel, the most far right in Israel's history of existence, Benjamin Netanyahu, coming out and celebrating him, somebody who has actually been calling Donald Trump as the president in waiting for months and making calculations, we know and have reported, about what his plans are for the future of the wars he is waging based on the outcome of what happened tonight.
And we know that other leaders have been speaking with Donald Trump privately, have visited him. They haven't been reported publicly, but many of them have maintained close relationships with him.
That's right. Leaders in the Gulf, leaders in Europe as well. The Prime Minister of Poland was deployed by the Allies to try to convince him to change his position on Ukraine. Very concerned that the vice president he has chosen would affirm an isolationist view that would indicate that there are very big problems and perhaps wind in the sails of Vladimir Putin, despite the fact that he is losing a number of soldiers on the battlefield. You know,
We didn't get a chance to talk to Gary Cohn about all of this, but when you think of two of the items in the Trump agenda, the promises he's going to keep, tariffs, 40% of the American economy is trade related. So even if Trump doesn't do the full Megillah, you're talking about massive disruption or plan for massive disruption in 40% of the economy or more, and then immigration. So much of the work, you want to build all that new housing? Who does the building of that new housing? The people that Donald Trump wants to deport. And when you think about just the economic upheaval that he's promising and how that will cycle through, we've been talking about the voters who feel like he heard them and understands them and will fight for them, but the policies he's advocating for, how those match up with those expectations, that will be fascinating to watch.
I want to continue this conversation, but we got to squeeze in a quick break. Coming up, where the race stands in the contest to 270 electoral votes. We'll be right back.
Okay, so let's just start at the beginning.
Well, let me start with this. What is at stake here? What is the answer then?
Do you know why?
You want me to just keep going?
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Were there death threats?
How is this possible?
What's wrong with that argument?
Are you saying they lied?
Have you told the government that? Why won't you say the word crisis?
You're not answering my question.
Is that scary?
Does that make sense?
What do you mean?
What does that mean in
Did any of that make sense?
What's your response?
What happened?
Why?
It's time for the CBS News Original 60 Minutes, Sunday on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
There is no more room in our city.
New York City is receiving record numbers of migrants.
Today, we're going to have more than 500 adults and children come through that door.
Tensions rise as shelters reach max capacity.
We don't have to take care of it.
CBS Reports goes inside a crisis cities and families are facing as they fight to survive.
The United States still has a glimmer of hope for people to come here.
Fighting for a future. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
This case.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered.
There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original, 48 Hours, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
I can see clearly now.
CBS Mornings Plus, clearly more news, more smart conversation.
More money-saving tips, more recipes.
More uplifting ways to get you on your way.
Plus, more sports, more weather.
Clearly, more CBS Mornings.
Plus,
Sunshiny day.
I'm Lindsay Reiser at the CBS Broadcast Center in New York with coverage of CBS News America Decides. Donald Trump is claiming victory as he nears the 270 electoral college votes needed to become the nation's 47th president in history. Trump spoke to supporters at his election night campaign headquarters in West Palm Beach, Florida, on stage surrounded by family. Here's some of that.
It's a political victory that our country has never seen before, nothing like this. I want to thank the American people for the extraordinary honor of being elected your 47th president and your 45th president. And every citizen, I will fight for you, for your family, and your future. Every single day, I will be fighting for you, and with every breath in my body, I will not rest until we have delivered the strong, safe, and prosperous America that our children deserve and that you deserve. This will truly be the golden age of America. That's what we have to have. This is a magnificent victory for the American people that will allow us to make America great again. And in addition to having won the battleground states of North Carolina, I love these places, Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, we are now winning in Michigan, Arizona, Nevada, and Alaska, which would result in us carrying at least 315 electoral votes. But it's much easier doing what the networks did or whoever called it, because there was no other path. There was no other path to victory. We also have won the popular vote. That was great.
Mr. Trump is expected to have a full grasp of power, with Republicans projected to take control of the Senate. The House has not been called. Thanks for staying with us. You're watching CBS News America Decides.
Star approaching, superstar approaching. I can see clearly now that the rain is gone.
That's right.
Let's do it. Let's go. Let's do this. I can see clearly now that the rain is gone. Superstar approaching, superstar approaching.
Just get your popcorn and get ready.
Come on, Julia. Oh, no. I will if you will. You go, gal.
Yeah, boy. Dollar Jill.
If you can't get into the market, it's okay. Renting is fine.
Box, oh, it's bad. Screw cap, oh, it's bad. It's not true.
We are making a wonderful lemony chicken.
Ooh, it's hot. That's good.
I wonder what Serena's doing. I wonder how Serena is feeling.
That's a really good question. No one's asked me that yet.
You're 70 years old? 70, yeah.
I'm 21.
She's the first black woman on the Supreme Court, and she's determined she won't be the last.
Morning.
Welcome back to CBS News Election 2024. Good morning. It is 3:30 a.m. in the East, 12:30 in the West. We have been on the air for 9 hours straight covering this election, and it has been a very big night for Donald Trump and the Republican Party as the former president appears to be headed for re-election. He declared victory in the past hour in a speech to supporters in Florida. And in the race to 270 electoral votes, Trump's received 266. Kamala Harris has 218. We're just waiting for some more votes to come in before calling the remainder of these states. And we want to go behind the numbers to see how Trump put together this coalition. John Dickerson and his team have been looking at the exit polls. John?
I've picked out 3 things. There's a lot of things, and we'll have plenty of days to talk about them. But let's just start. We've talked about it before. Let's just talk about the gender gap, or really most specifically, the vote for president among women. So the vice president got 54% of the vote, and Donald Trump got 44% of the vote. So Kamala Harris got 10 points more than Donald Trump, but Joe Biden got 15 points more. This is a post-Roe going away, post the conviction of Donald Trump.
It's almost inexplicable.
Well, it's going to require a lot of, there'd be a really interesting conversation because remember in 2020, the number of women who were turned off by Donald Trump. Yeah. Well, they have in some measure come back. He has done better with them. So that is, that's not just an area where the vice president didn't perform, but he performed better. And again, what were considered his liabilities that he didn't bother fixing, turns out they weren't liabilities. So again, it's an affirmation of his gut instincts, which will matter when he's in office, when he's going to be following those gut instincts and perhaps listening to no one else. Now let's look at the vote for president in white non-college. This is a group that we knew Donald Trump was going to win. He won it handily, 31 points better than Kamala Harris. This is the heart of the Trump coalition, the people he says his presidency will be aimed towards. He did as strongly with them, to use a Donald Trump word, as he needed to. So he turned out his. So Kamala Harris didn't turn out her important supporter. He turned out his. And then finally, Latino voters, because, and this is a stand-in really for the growth that
45%.
That exactly 45% for Donald Trump. He got 32% in 2020.
And I remember before that, George W. Bush had the high water mark at 40%.
Right. Yeah. And so this is a part, and Trump also did well with African Americans, better with African Americans than a Republican has done before, did particularly well with African American men. This is a part of that new coalition that we're talking about, and that emerged out of his victory tonight, and that it's not just his victory, it's the Senate candidates, House candidates. That's when people talk about a realignment. This is the beginning. These are some of the elements of that realignment.
Yeah, Ed, what makes up that realignment in the Republican Party?
Well, we had been told over the last several months that in order to win the White House again, Democrats would have to hit 60% among Latinos. So they clearly weren't able to do that. And as Leslie was saying earlier, as we've seen in these exit polls, it's economic concerns. These people don't want to be talked to anymore as minorities. They want to be talked to as Americans who worry about the bottom line. And who are concerned about their jobs, concerned about their kids' future. And I remember a guy I met in Phoenix who runs a hot dog stand. We had him on the evening news who said all sorts of things about how he didn't like former President Trump's rhetoric, but then turned around and said, but I don't know if I can vote for her.
One of the things he said that
all these years, Democrats have asked for my vote and said they were going to work on immigration and work on improving my life, and I don't believe that it's happened. I tried contacting Aureliano today to figure out who he voted for. He hasn't told us, but I suspect it was Donald Trump.
If you talk to many fervent Trump supporters, one thing that they will say, in addition to liking his economic policies and some of his bravado or machismo, whatever you want to call it, they've also said that what they don't like are the quote-unquote woke policies of the Democratic Party.
Yep.
How much does that play into it?
It's good. If you look at all this, the fact that they couldn't win women, the fact that they couldn't hold on to their Latino coalition, there's going to be a big reckoning about whether or not there was too much discussion about that over the last several years. Yes.
I know. So, Ed, what is the lesson, do you think, for the Democratic Party from what happened in 2016 to what is happening today in 2024?
I mean,
what are the lessons here?
Well, they were identity politics.
Right.
Yeah.
But I will say, Kamala Harris really shifted the way that she campaigned for Latinos, to target Latinos.
Yeah, no, it just struck me in the minute, forgive me, is just as soon as I said that, I had forgotten that if you look at how much money the Republicans spent on that issue about transgender. Yes.
Although,
did that weigh with women or non-college educated?
It
was
weighed
that
with
more?
Latinos. They did one of the few ads they did in Spanish language was on this issue, and that sells.
Although
and it ran during football a lot, right? Football.
Although as bad as Harris's numbers are in other areas, when the exit polls asked, are Kamala Harris's views too extreme, only 46% said yes, 51 no. For Trump, the extreme question, 55 said yes, 43 no. The thing is, for Trump, there are a lot of people for whom some of his voters, I haven't seen the crosstabs, who would say, well, extreme is fine. Being too extreme is fine. Can I just say one other dog that didn't bark? Republicans for Harris. Kamala Harris spent a lot of time, campaigned a lot with Liz Cheney. Only 5% of Republicans in the exit polls voted for Harris. It was 6% for Biden in 2020. All of those Republicans that were going to come over to the Harris campaign.
She brought them all to Pennsylvania. They were in Bucks County, weren't they? They were all on stage with her.
I was there.
Yeah, I remember that.
But I think
the Bucks County. And look, you got to understand about the people the traditional Republican in Bucks County. I grew up watching these people. Is that they vote with their wallet. They are economically driven. They have business jobs at suburban office parks in Princeton, New Jersey. They go to New York City on New Jersey Transit every day or down to Philadelphia.
Bring bagels back for the weekend.
Everything bagels, all of this toasted with cream cheese, maybe a pork roll and cheese. These are people who care about the Eagles and care about their financial interests, and they care about their communities, but they are Republicans. And they're Republicans because they want to pay lower taxes, and they move to Bucks County, not to Philadelphia, the city, or not to New York, because they want to have a good standard of living and they want to pay lower taxes. They want to not have to spend a lot of money.
So Bob, where was that secret women Republican vote we kept hearing about? That they're going to say one thing to their friends and their spouses, but they're going to get in the booth and they're going to make another decision. What happened to them?
I never saw it.
Yeah.
I never saw it.
You never thought that was the thing.
Well, it didn't. That's why.
You never thought it was a thing.
That's why Harris.
I didn't think it was a thing. I never saw it.
That's why Harris only won women with by 10 points.
Yeah. It's going to be one of the biggest miscalculations. She could have been spending time on this. Somebody pointed out today, there are 9 HBCUs in North Carolina. Do you know how many of them she visited? 1. Imagine if she'd been spending time doing that instead of hanging out with Liz Cheney in the Midwest. Could have been a different story tonight. And there are going to be all sorts of conversations about that. Should she have doubled down on the base and not worried about fighting Republican women?
But I don't even know that they could tell you what the base is tonight, Ed.
Right.
Clearly.
I think if the strategy was to double down on the base and you pulled the, Sochi from Harris's campaign, they could not tell you who that base is right now.
Well, look, I said this, to Gail when we were on your show yesterday morning. The fundamentals of this race have always favored Donald Trump. 2/3 of the Republican Party said that this country is headed in the wrong direction. When that's the case, they throw out the incumbent party, and that is the Biden-Harris administration.
Look, I just want to say, throughout this, our CBS polling from Anthony Salvanto's unit has been on the money to say it will be the economy, the economy, the economy. Economy, comma, inflation, actually, not just economy. And that would be such a driving force, and the border. And he had warned us for months that the momentum the Democrats thought they were getting off of abortion had tapped out weeks ago that they weren't seeing that. And yet we heard from the Harris campaign, no. We also heard from the Harris campaign, no, you are wrong when you see that the support has tapped out on the issue of the state of democracy. That was something late in the campaign they transitioned back to. That was the closing argument alongside Liz Cheney. So it's like people were just reading completely different signals.
The democracy point, I'll show some self-awareness here. I spent a year of my life digging into January 6th. I believe, based on my reporting, it was a very serious moment in American history. You had a president of the United States work to pressure his party and his vice president to overturn the election. Working with Bob Woodward, we reported that the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff believed President Trump was in serious mental decline. It was in threat of misusing the military in the final days in a way that was somewhat comparable to Nixon and concerns in August 74, but far worse in the eyes of Milley and others. January 6th, for Congresswoman Cheney, for others who have studied it, the January 6th committee was this explosion in American democracy. But as a reporter, I must also acknowledge, even if I found this to be serious based on my reporting, when I was on the campaign trail in 2024 and in 2022, when I was talking to Republican voters, centrist voters, Democratic voters, even though Democrats took a bit of a different view, many voters did not process January 6, 2021 as a grave moment in American democracy. And because of that, a lot of Republican voters are not turning on the character and conduct question.
How is that possible, though, Bob? When you look at those pictures, I think that's what many people are grappling with. You look at January 6th, he characterized it as a protest of love. He characterized it as patriots. Yet, you're right when you say that is not how people saw that. How is that possible?
It's possible because there are many people who amplify Trump's point of view.
They thread the needle between separating him, Donald Trump, from the people who carried out the violence. That's what you often hear mainstream Republicans say.
I'm wondering,
prosecute those who broke the law.
I'm wondering kind of what flows from that, because one of the things that we have heard about the people surrounding Donald Trump is the idea of retribution. And he has talked about retribution. There has even been a so-called secretary of retribution, where all of those who have wronged Donald Trump will face retribution, punishment, whatever it may be, from the former president, future president, and the White House. How will the Justice Department in some ways be changed and perhaps weaponized against those enemies?
I mean, he has, I just was pulling some of the things he said in the last few months on perhaps even the least threatening end, and this is threatening revoking broadcast licenses for broadcast networks, including the threat to revoke this one, going after what he calls the enemy within of his political rivals by name, Biden, Pelosi, the entire, quote, Biden crime family. He says he would fire special counsel Jack Smith within 2 seconds of taking office. And as we were saying earlier, he called for the televised military tribunal of Liz Cheney. We started this conversation, John, when you questioned whether the checks in place would keep him in check. I wonder if there's anyone left around him right now who would even impose some of those checks. The John Kellys and the Mark Milleys are gone. Those are the people who were the checks before.
All of the list of retribution things he will perhaps not get to, not because he's checked, but because he just doesn't want to bother with the follow through. I mean, some of these things are actually hard to follow through. He may just have other things to do.
And there's a lot of bluster that comes with things that Donald Trump says.
Signal sending, too. What I wondered, Bob, is the Liz Cheney wing of the party big? Is it even big enough to fit on an airport shuttle bus, or does it even exist anymore? I mean, do we need a new language to talk about that portion of the Republican Party?
Well, those shuttle buses have at least 14 seats.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, an airport shuttle bus. Are there enough? Are there 14 seats, Bob?
The way we think about the shape of the Republican Party and how small that is and kind of what role it plays.
It's not even about whether we should rethink. We are being forced to rethink.
Yeah. So what do we think?
It'd almost be like if you talked about the Republican Party today in terms of all its positioning and went back to Theodore Roosevelt or Lincoln, or if you were a Democrat today talking about John F. Kennedy. The Republican Party of Mitt Romney is not the Republican, and George H.W. Bush. And George W. Bush is not the Republican Party of Donald Trump. Donald Trump has stolen the issues from the Democrats: trade, manufacturing, this foreign policy approach, which is the opposite of a muscular interventionist approach.
An isolationist policy.
He wouldn't term it that way, but yes, I mean, America first, as he puts it, which is an echo of what we heard in the 1930s from Charles Lindbergh. You're seeing a total overhaul of the Republican Party. And when you're the nominee 3 times, that's like a hammer against the head, politically speaking. They're banging the point again and again that it's not Romney's party, Cheney's party, Bush's party. And we've covered this.
But is it dead? Is it dead? Like,
it's
we knew
dead.
it was Monty Python
Ages ago. It's dead in the sense of the voters we've covered believe that party is dead and they don't want to support it anymore.
And this is an excellent conversation for a podcast. But in a moment, when we return, more from our amazing team. You're watching CBS News, America Decides.
I had progressively fallen deeper into the world of online sports betting.
The risk is the rush.
What do you think is driving the spike in popularity?
I think it's legality.
If it's legal, I'm going to use it. There are ways to bet when you are 18.
We've created an epidemic of child gambling.
You can't walk into a male dormitory in a college campus without sports betting happening.
It's America's most neglected problem.
I used sports betting as a way to escape, when in reality, I'm choosing self-destruction. Whatever I had left, it was gone.
The purpose of the industry is to get you to play to extinction. And that means until all your money is gone.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my 2 good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings.
Don't miss true crime anytime you want, anywhere you go. With the 48 Hours podcast. Real crimes, real lives, real justice.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Listen to 48 Hours on Apple Podcasts.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Imagine yourself in Manhattan with no police, no army, no mayor.
The people of Haiti stare down poverty, corruption, natural disasters, and violence.
90% of the guns that are used by gangs in Haiti are American guns.
But with an unbreakable spirit and eternal optimism.
There are days where I cry, but we can't be discouraged. We still believe in Haiti.
They're still able to look ahead with hope.
Haiti is on the brink of transformation, a radical shift. Nations are coming together and saying things must change.
Fighting for Haiti, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Come on, Julia. Oh, no. I will if you will.
You go, Gail.
Superstar approaching, superstar approaching.
I want to make sure that my voice is heard, but also lift up other voices.
Hey, give me some love, baby.
We'll see you 7 o'clock sharp.
Sunday morning, a visit with the Wayans at...
It's time to put the divisions of the past 4 years behind us. It's time to unite. And we're going to try. We have to try. And it's going to happen. Success will bring us together. I've seen that.
You should.
And a calm Donald Trump tonight in giving his remarks there in West Palm Beach earlier tonight and declaring a victory. Our CBS News data desk has a race update now. Nevada is lean Republican. That is the 7th of the battleground states, which was the last to close, and that is lean Republican. There's also a key Senate race in Nevada that I would love to see what those numbers are now. It could result, there we see Sam Brown, a veteran, a West Point graduate, who you can see was injured and then is running for the United States Senate, spoke at the Republican National Convention in a very tight contest there against Jackie Rosen. Want to go to Major Garrett at the data desk. Major?
Yes, Nora. So let's walk through Nevada and why we have created this lean Trump designation for Nevada. Let's go to the model. Show you what the model is right now. It shows, as you can see at home, a very, very narrow band, almost an impossible band. But we still don't have quite enough vote in to make an absolute declaration. But the needs of Kamala Harris in Nevada are pronounced. 66% of the outstanding vote is what we estimate that she needs. And well, you can see the sizable gap here. This is a lean Nevada, but it is moving very, very much in the for Trump and confirmed category. We're just waiting for a little bit of more vote to come in on that for absolute clarity. You mentioned the Senate race, Nora. I will jump to that very quickly to show you where things are statewide. We'll show you the needs for Jackie Rosen, the incumbent, 49% of the outstanding vote. We project 35% based on our estimates. So right now, Sam Brown, the challenger, has the edge in that Senate race, and that would be a significant pickup for Republicans, and that's putting it mildly.
Really interesting to see that contest there in Nevada. All right. And what's the very latest in Arizona?
So Arizona is, as we have, Chris Van Cleve has talked about this, David Becker has reinforced this, we're just getting slight tick-ups